All right, well, good evening and welcome to the 1888 Lounge for a special edition of Race Day Live and a book launch today, Hoofprints and Heartstrings, A Boy's Memories of Maritime Harness Racing in the 1970s by Russell Henderson. And great to be here tonight. And I know many of you that are joining us online, and we're getting some texts and some emails wondering where you can find it. Well, you can find it right on our Race Day broadcast as well. Just go to the Red Shores YouTube channel. So it's a pleasure to have Nicole McPherson with me tonight. We sort of build this as a fireside chat. This is not our first time that we've done this. We've done this with a couple other book launches, but nice to have you here tonight.
It's great to be here, Lee. I'm really excited about this book. It's a fantastic read, and I know everybody's going to enjoy it so much.
Now, I know Russell's here tonight, some family members here tonight, some folks joining us online from all over, and we'll set the stage a little bit for you tonight. We actually had a race program that was pushed back to 2 o'clock today. It was all part of the Home Hardware Maritime Breeders, and of course, we had the rain, the weather forecast that was kicking into gear. So we moved that program back a little bit, which pushed the book launch out a little bit. But we're on now and ready to go. And we will have some special guests joining us tonight as well. But let's introduce some of the guests at our head table here tonight that's going to be joining us.
Perfect. So, of course, we have our guest of honor, Russell Henderson. Welcome, Russell.
Amber Nicholson is right alongside as well, and I was talking to Amber a little earlier. She's the editor for the book, did a lot of work on this book as well, and this has been a long project and a very exciting project, and was really excited to talk to Amber about that and all the different things that went into this great book. And by the way, if you don't have your copy, and I know many of you do, but waiting for this launch tonight, and I think we're going to get a shot of the 1888 room here where we are tonight. But in any case, it was great the work that Amber did on this book, and a real whole team of individuals, Nicole.
Definitely. And another person that was supposed to join us this evening was Jerry McCabe. Jerry's not feeling well, so shout out to Jerry. I know he's watching. We wish he could be here, but Jerry did a tremendous amount of work for the book. He's such a great historian and writer himself. So his contributions were quite amazing.
They certainly were. This actual room, just a few weeks ago, was the 1888 room. It was used for the memory lane display. And just like Russell's book, where the first time I picked it up and got really into the book, it was taking you a trip down memory lane of the 70s, which was amazing. But I know Jerry and Paul Murphy and Dr. Don Ling did a lot of work in this very room just a few weeks ago for the Breeders' Crown weekend. So we're going to hear from Russell after a little bit. And we actually have some guests that are going to be joining us tonight. Marcel Berrio, I understand, is in the wings here, so we'll be bringing him on after a little bit. But our first guest tonight is, well, it really needs no introduction when it comes to books, and that's Larry Rudzinski.
Exactly.
And he is the publisher of Retro Media. And you've worked with Larry for quite some time, and he's really passionate about every project that he takes on.
He is very passionate about every project he takes on. I mean, most recently, prior to this, we did the Don McDougall book and launch, which was also a great book as well. But Larry and I met probably about 8 years ago now, and we worked on various books together and the website and the marketing and things like that. But I have never met anybody so passionate about harness racing.
Yeah, he certainly has a lot of great books over the years. And I had the chance to talk to Russell during Old Home Week, and he joined us on the Race Day broadcast. And that was my real first glance of getting some about the book, but also talking to the author about the book and the passion that Russell has about it and his view that he brings to this book from his perspective growing up in St. John was really something else. And it's really one of those books. I know we're into October now, the end of October. You're looking for Christmas presents for those in harness racing. This is the one that you want to add to that collection. So I think we're going to go right now to Larry Rudzinski, and Larry's standing by here, and we'll bring along some comments from Larry.
Publishing, Canada's leading publisher of harness racing books in North America. And that's quite a feat when you consider we're one of the smallest publishers in Canada, and we're coming out of Canada's smallest province, Prince Edward Island. First of all, when I received the manuscript from Russell Henderson, believe it or not, it was about 160,000 words. Now, I don't know if you've ever read a book that's 160,000 words in length, but it's darn near impossible to ship a book that's that size, especially with gas prices being what they are and with transportation pricing as high as it is. So we had to reduce it, and we were very fortunate once again to have a dream team working on this book, starting with Russell Henderson, the author, who wrote a fantastic harness racing book about maritime harness racing in the 1970s, one of the peak eras in the industry in Atlantic Canada in history. Amber Nicholson was and is the editor of this book, and she did a gargantuan job in reducing the book with the help from Russell and Jerry McCabe, Lee Shepard, and myself. But she did most of the heavy lifting, as they say, to reduce the book from 160,000 words to about 60,000 words so you could enjoy it. Tremendous team of people with Russell Henderson, the author, Amber Nicholson, the editor, Jerry McCabe, who checked out the information. He's Atlantic Canada's probably, well, let's call him the most famous of Atlantic Canadian researchers on harness racing, and one of the most celebrated harness racing historians in the region. So he made sure that all of the information was accurate, and Orly Shepard did a beautiful job in putting this book together. I'm talking about the graphic design. It's just a beautiful looking book, as you can see here. So thank you to the dream team. Amber Nicholson to get that assignment to get the book reduced from 160,000 to 60. I don't think she got any gray hairs from it, but well, she's too young to have gray hair. Anyhow, here's what you're going to like about the book. There's tremendous humor in it, and Russell, in a Woody Allen, if you're old enough to remember that name, style of humor, both in books and in movies, in this case, in the book. Russell has a unique sense of humor, and it filters through much of the book, but he's also very sensitive in handling the sad events that are mentioned in the book, and they are very sad events, but he has a sensitive way of handling them. His love of the horses, his heroes of his youth, that's clear, stands out, stands tall in this book. And his respect for the maritime star drivers, and trainers and owners of that era, also stands out. Joining us virtually today, we're very fortunate to have three great harness racing drivers and stars in the industry over a long period of time, including Billy O'Donnell, Mike Stevenson, Marcel Barrio, and Wally Hennessy. So that's going to be part of the program today. You can't do something like this when you're as small as we are without sponsors. And a big thank you to the title sponsor, Bill and Denise Andrew and Meridian Farms, and the contributing sponsors, HRNB, which is Horse Racing New Brunswick, thanks to Brock McCachran's help in making all this happen. Thanks to Lauren Henderson as well for her contributing sponsorship, and also to the St. John Exhibition Association and Judy Martin there. Special thanks to an extremely multi-talented Nicole McPherson, who can do pretty well anything, is outstanding in every way. She's co-hosting today with Lee Drake, but she also does our website, did the run of show for your show that you're going to see shortly, and we couldn't do a lot of the things we do without her, and we thank her for all of her great work and personality, I might add. So, Lee Drake, same thing, another winning talent, multi-talented individual. He's the manager of racing and the broadcast division of Redshores. Redshores on PEI, that's the racing, dining, and the casino operations at Redshores. So it's quite an operation, Redshores. So we're thankful to Lee Drake. He's co-hosting again, and he will do a great job, as well as Nicole. Rebecca McDonald, thank you to you from Redshores for doing some of the detailed work to make sure this all comes together. And Scott McLean of Universum, who once again is leading the way with his group to make sure that this works both live and online. So we're very fortunate to have a lot of talented people involved. Also, thank you to the government of PEI, the Publishing Assistance Program, Shannon Pratt and Kelly McKinnon in particular, who we dealt with. And let me just say, I don't want to take too much time. Let me just say that this book is a long shot, and it's quite amazing. Sometimes long shots come in. I think this long shot showing the potential right now already with early sales, pre-launch sales, that it is the little long shot that's coming in. And you never know, it might be in the winner's circle. So thanks a lot for being all part of this. Hope you enjoy the book.
All right, so Larry Brzezinski there, and the publisher with Retro Media. Some kind words for you, Nicole, and rightfully so. And it is quite a dream team on this book.
It is, for sure. I know a lot of time and effort went into this book, and not only from editing it down to the size it was to what it is now, but the images and the stories and all the detail that's put into this book just make it. It's a great story. It's a great piece of history. But I think you don't even have to be involved in harness racing to enjoy this book.
Oh, that's right.
Sure.
Well, it is. We have our very own copy here, and you can get it online. I know that Larry mentioned about book sales prior to this, and yes, we did have a great promotion on. It went till October 15th, where you had a chance to purchase the book, use the promo code, and then get in for a table for 4 on the 2024 Gold Cup Saucer. And I understand we have those ballots tonight. We're going to make those draws.
We do have the
right.
ballots tonight, so we will be drawing for that. So
All
that's
right.
exciting. And we'll contact the winner after the show.
And we will, and then we'll make all the arrangements on our new patio that's coming for 2024. But Larry mentioned about long shots. Well, you know, favorites only win 33% of the time. And, you know, when you have the long shots, people love playing the long shots, and they love backing a long shot. And this book isn't a long shot. I think actually more of a favorite. And if it's not one of your favorites yet, it certainly will be. All right, so I guess we have our first guest ready to go. Now, we don't have direct contact with the control room, but we were told that Marcel Barrio is standing by, and Nicole's going to introduce our next guest here today on our book launch for Hoofprints and Heartstrings, a boy's memories of maritime harness racing in the 1970s.
Perfect. I'm really excited to introduce Marcel Barrio. Marcel is the youngest of 5 sons of Leonard Barrio. Marcel Barrio is also known as Pops, established himself as a top trainer driver at EPR in the 1970s. He became one of the Maritime's top horsemen before relocating to Montreal, where he became a leading trainer, and later Ottawa, and finally settling in southern Ontario. He has campaigned numerous stake championships and aged stars at each stop. Marcel has 3,300 driving victories and over 1,500 training wins on his record. So very excited to introduce Marcel Barrio.
See if we can bring in Marcel Barrio over there. And there he is. Good afternoon,
Yes.
Marcel.
Good afternoon, Lee. Nice to be here, Riches.
Yeah, well, yeah. Where are you calling in from, Marcel?
My home in Toronto.
Your home in Toronto. Well,
Yeah.
you know, Nicole and I were very excited to get an opportunity to talk to you, and I know Russell and the guests here with the book, Hoofprints and Heartstrings. And I guess my first question to you about the 70s is what it was like competing in the 1970s and some of those great memories at Exhibition Park Raceway.
Well, first of all, I came back from Foxborough. I spent a couple of years there, and I was trying to get into St. John. So being so full, I couldn't get in there till after Exhibition Week in '72. So I had to wait because there was no stalls. That's how packed it was, like, you know. And finally, I did get 10 stalls after Exhibition Week. So I've been there spent 13 years there. Yeah. So I can say I had the good times. And the horsemen competing there was unbelievable. Like, you know, I don't know how many went away, like, and done well, like the Rankins, the Whalens, Hennessy's, and I can name so many, like, you know. So that's how tough it was. John Holmes and, you know, Paul McKenzie. So it was a very competitive place to race at. And it kept getting better, like, you know, until the 80s, like, you know. So it was an amazing time. Yeah.
Hey, what would you say would be one of the funniest stories you would have out of St. John?
Oh boy.
Uh-oh.
I'd have to think about that. Well, one thing, we had a great fun playing hockey and playing baseball because we had a team, EPR Ponies, and Wally McGinnis and all people connected with the racetrack. So we played twice a week in the summertime, the ball, and twice a week in the wintertime. So we had quite a few laughs there, I want to tell you. Yeah. So I don't know. I can't, none come off top of my head right now.
Yeah. Marcel, some of the great horses you mentioned, you came in with, you actually struck a nerve there with stalls because we're running in the same situation here with stalls. You can't get stalls. But you moved in after Exhibition Week, and can you share with us some of your stable stars at that time to get settled there? Because you mentioned about the competition was really tough, which, by the way, you fit in very nicely there. But can you talk about some of the early horses and some of the competitors that you had at that time?
Well, the earlier years, I went there with kind of family horses that we had, like my father, and like Pat Flash and Fancy Flash, like our kind of breed. And, you know, it was only a few years after that I started getting horses from different people, and many of them supported me from the island, like Tom McPhee and Ronnie Gass. And, you know, they kind of, if I had an empty stall, they wanted it, like, you know, they'd leave the horse there. And it was just amazing. Like, you know, for the longest time, I had about 20 horses there, you know, and I ended up with Al Petit, like, but that was later on in the 70s, like, you know, in Flying Caper. He kind of was the first invitational horse that I had. Yeah, to compete on the circuit. So it was a gradual thing, like, yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think from reading when I read the book, and there were some great tales in there. Just wondering if you wanted to pass a little message along to Russell.
Well, Russell, I'll tell you, I read the book myself. I got it and then I read it, and I was amazed, like, how he described the race. Every race that he described, it was right to a T. Like, I wouldn't have remembered, but as soon as I started reading, I remember the races like it was last night, like, and he done one heck of a job, like expressing himself. And but the only thing I still can't believe that he was so bad in school, and he ends up writing a book. How could that come along? Yeah. So that puzzles me.
Marcel, one of the things that did strike me about the book, and you touched on it there, was Russell's view that he had when he first started coming over to the track. It was the view from the top turn, and how he would watch the action and the horses and the drivers, and mentioned just how competitive it was. And I guess in those days, back in the 70s, you mentioned some of the drivers you're competing at. It was very, very competitive week in and week out at Exhibition Park Raceway.
Oh, for sure. Like, it's like I mentioned there a few names, but, and then you got the Rankin, Earl Smith. Earl Smith used to come there with 10 or 12. And, Francis, he was always full. And with the McPhees and McPhail, and, they all had good horses. Like, and week after week, you invite, like, it was no gimme, like, and you see a horse dominate like for 2-3 weeks, and then the next one would take over, and that's what made for good racing, like,
Mm-hmm.
And one thing about Doug Caldwell, like, he made sure that all the fields were equal, like, he made it tough, like, to drive there, and you had to be at your top, like. So
So I just wanted to ask you, Marcel, we remember some of the great wins around the Maritimes, especially at Exhibition Park Raceway, but also the Gold Cup and Saucer and different competitive races, and then some of the stake stars you've had over the years as well. And that's the neat thing about this book. I mean, it's sort of centered on Exhibition Park Raceway, but there was a lot of traveling in those days, and a lot of different tracks that you competed in at the time. What was the scheduling like for you and your stable at that time? Because that had to be a very busy time.
Well, it was mostly in the summertime, all the traveling, like, for sure, like different tracks every week. And sometimes you'd have to go there 3-4 times a year, like, and I mean, Colts, I turn into Colts, like, from Charlie Willis, like, he started buying Colts and giving them to me. And I started with Kilcairn Robbie and BJ Amigo and Dunmore Tweed, and they all made at one year, I think I had 3 or 4 horses of the year, like Yuta Sissy there for George Riley, and they were all top, and sometimes I hated to go there because we'd always come back with 3 or 4 winners later. Yeah, no, it was a great thing. And then when I decided to go to Montreal, it was because of that, because I had a powerful stable, like, Angel Shadow come around, and Silent Class, and, Big D, and I went to Montreal with them, and I done real well, like in the wintertime, with the ID coming back in the summertime to race in the Maritime, because a lot of them were Maritime breds. So it was quite a excited to be there. Like, I mean, it was a good time, very good time. Yeah.
Before we let you go, And I know we're going to hear from Russell here in a few minutes, so you'll be able to hear some of his comments. But some of the folks that you worked with, I mean, at the time that you had on your team, moving into St. John after Exhibition Week, and you get your 10 stalls and then a very healthy stable. How about some of the folks that were on your team, on the Barrio team at that time?
Well, when it started, there was no racing on the island, and they used to come there, like I said, Earl Smith with 10, 12, and McPhee's were out every week. They were trucking. And I had the fortunate luck to have good help because of that. And just to name a few, there was Kenny Arsenault that worked with me one winter, and McQuaid was with me, and Blaine Bagalow. And I had them for a few years. And every year in the wintertime especially, I recruited somebody from the island, and good horsemen. They went on and done well for themselves. And later on, and I was fortunate enough to get my nephew Gilles to work for me, and his brother Rael, and that was quite a boost, to have them kind of fellows working for me, to train horses, colts, and everything. And that's probably why we had tremendous luck with that, because I had tremendous people working for me.
Well, if you go over the years in the book here, and it is Hoofprints and Heartstrings, A Boy's Memories of Maritime Harness Racing in the 1970s. It is chock full of great memories, Marcel. You're in the book, of course, and many others, and I remember names like, Clarky Smith and Steve Mahar, and you mentioned all the great talented drivers over the years for it. So it's really something to have you on here, and I know you're still keeping busy, and you've got some young horses there still adding to your stable, and you're still going strong.
Yeah. Just to go another era, I had the great Grand Sealster this year. I don't know.
Yes, for sure.
When you're, yeah. I wouldn't want to get off the air without mentioning her name. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, whether it's virtual or in person. And this book here brings back some great memories, and we're really glad that you can join us, all part of the book launch here tonight, Marcel. Thank you very much.
Well, it's
Thanks
my
so much.
pleasure, and it's my pleasure, and thank you for asking me.
So Marcel Barry, our special guest tonight. Russell Henderson sitting right here in front of us, and I'm sure has to be pleased with some of the great comments there from Marcel and all the great times that you have watched him in action over the years, and we really appreciate Marcel taking the time. So before we get to Wally and before we get to Billy and hopefully be able to get to Mike, we're going to ask Russell for you to come forward, and we're going to ask you a few questions about the book here, and an opportunity to do that. So I never really shorten any answers for sure. I found that out because, right over here. And especially the great interview that we had during race day, during Old Home Week. So, Phil, I think his mic is live there. And if he is, Nicole's ready to go.
Perfect. Hi, Russell. I guess the first question is, what might be some of the personal reasons that you chose to write the book?
There's many reasons, and Lee and I talked about in our first interview, but one of the personal reasons is, and Marcel kind of touched on it, I've always felt I had a debt to pay back to the industry. And I mean that figuratively, not literally. So to the people, to the horses, to the education system that Marcel touched on, and maybe to myself. So ultimately, I guess the audience and the reader will decide whether or not I was able to square the account a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about, we have copies of the book here. There's folks that's tuning in today, and they're getting their own copies of the book. And what is the significance of the cover photo, and where did you discover that?
Well, that was given to me by Don Bickford shortly before he passed, and I don't think anybody had ever saw that before. And when he handed it to me, he had a few old photos. I knew the horse on the inside and the drivers right away, And I had already written a story about the horse on the inside. He comes up in the first time I ever tried to jog a horse, which didn't go well, as the reader will find out. So I was attracted to the cover right then. And in the middle, you'll see Carl Jamieson, that was in EPR in the mid-'70s. And I had written a story about Carl saving my life one afternoon. And, well, saved me from serious injury. But so that appealed to me for the cover, but also the background of all the crowd and the grandstand and the excitement. I just thought it would be something that could be useful if this ever came to fruition to become a book. Then our graphic designer, Orly Shepard, got a hold of it, and with some other pictures, and she inserted the picture of my father and myself in my first interaction with a horse. I think I was about 3 years old there, maybe, and it kind of, the significance to me is that was my first interaction with a horse, but in a few years later, I'm about to be surrounded and taken over by harness racing horses. So, and that was all Orly Shepard's design, and that's why she's a great graphic designer. And we're so grateful to have her on our team.
Do you try to be more original or deliberate to your readers? What do you think they might? Sorry, in what they might want or what you think they might want?
Well, because I'm not a writer, for a profession, I would say that I'm definitely more original. I think Amber would agree with that, our editor. But at the same time, when you start writing and you're just writing what you want to write, there does come a point where you say, okay, well, I don't know if anybody would relate to this. Maybe I'll change it around to see if I can get a few more people to possibly relate. But I would say, and Amber, do you agree, that definitely more original than trying to write for an audience, because ultimately you don't know if anybody's ever going to read anything you write. So you just write with your heart and see what happens.
In the book, you noticed a few of the great times that you would share memories of being around the barn. I know you mentioned the first time you came to the racetrack, and then you made your way down to the barn, and you actually you were able to warm up a horse a couple of times,
yeah,
and jog a horse, but it was nothing, like, you never expanded on that. It wasn't something that you wanted to continue to do?
No, that didn't go well either, and I always considered myself a tremendous driver when I was sitting on top of the grandstand on a chair. But trust me, sitting behind a live horse is completely different. So I learned early on that that was never going to happen, and I had, well, God rest their souls, Callie Rankin and Willard Carr and my good friend Doug Falkins, who made sure that I would never be near another horse. So, but no, I just like everybody, I guess, in sports, I'm an armchair quarterback. But I'm certainly grateful for those experiences of getting a chance to jog a horse, even though it didn't go well, as you'll find out when you read the book. So.
One of the themes through the book is your difficult time in school. Do you think the education system may have let you down?
No, I think I let them down. But it's funny, Nicole, that and Marcel touched on that too. He picked up on that as well. I got out of school exactly what I put into it, which was very little. But that wasn't the school's fault. That was ultimately my fault. I suppose you could say that some teachers maybe had written me off. The only problem was I didn't write back until now.
Yeah, you do have your own book. What were some of the challenges that you may want to describe for the book, or maybe some of the most rewarding part? I mean, obviously, Russell, to have it completed and in our hands here today, and able to for people to actually get their very own copy with your name as the author must be quite rewarding.
Yeah, when you speak of the rewards, Lee, you're absolutely right. The most rewarding part of this whole experience, and it took 12 or 13 years, is exactly what we're doing tonight. there's no way that I would have ever envisioned this as I worked. You know, I had a full-time job, but I just putted around as a hobby, and I never thought it would come to something like this. So the rewarding part is working with this team, and Amber knows that. Amber, Orly, Jerry, and Larry Vizitsky, for the last year and a half, had me on Zoom meetings. And even though you might have a hard day at work, there was nothing more exciting for me to join the Zoom meeting to talk about the book and to try to tweak it and always try to make it better before we got to this point. And those are the rewarding parts. And also, in the last, well, I guess it's been 2 months since we've went to print, the people I've got to meet that I never would have met, because I'm not as shy as I used to be, but I wanted to really try to meet people, if they wanted to meet me, to discuss, you know, the sport that we all love. So I never would have had that chance without this book. Now, as far as the challenging parts, the challenging parts were going through the process, not the editing and the book process, but the first 10 years of just doing it as a hobby and not knowing what you had, if you had anything. And then also, it's been, as I look back, it's been a little bit tough because many people that I mentioned, family and friends, they've passed on and they never got to see this night. So.
So what are some of the common traps for aspiring writers that you could share with us?
Well, yeah, I'm probably not qualified to answer, but I'll try. I can only say what worked for me and what didn't work for me. One of the things that I would always suggest to somebody is to write what you're passionate about and what you know something about. I could never write anything about engineering or space shuttles or anything like that. You have to have a passion for what you're going to write about, and you have to have maybe some knowledge and then research. The other trap that I think a lot of people would fall in, because there's all kinds of people that can write way better than I can, but I think what the trap they fall into is they try to write perfectly right off the start, and they try to write from page 1 to page, say, 200. This book was not written that way. It was written in segments. I think we had, 59 segments, Amber, at the start, something like that? Yeah. And that's what worked for me. The other trap you can fall into is you try to write too perfectly. You might write 2 paragraphs, and you look and say, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense, and that word's spelled wrong, and you crumple up the paper and you fire it in the wastebasket. Don't do that. Write, and just keep writing, and then let Amber fix it later on.
Yeah. Well, she certainly did a great job of that. I know she had to edit down the book, and there's some things that was probably left on the editing floor, but some great stories in here. You mentioned some great names and more names to come. One name that stuck out for me early in the 70s was Jack Bernard, who, when I grew up here, later he was back here on Prince Edward Island, but was a driving force at that time in Exhibition Park Raceway.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning him, Lee, because he was such a nice, a good friend of my father, and that was a barn that I frequented when I was 8 years old. And I mentioned in the book, for those who haven't read it, it was really because of my father that my brother and I were given a pass to be able to visit barns, because my father was such good friends with so many of the trainers and drivers and owners. So as long as we behaved, we were allowed to, hang around the barn and pat the horses, and Jack Bernard was one of the first ones, and a very nice man. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Russell, thanks very much. We have some other guests that we're going to get to, and I know we have some folks here, and we'll be set to go and back with a little more from you a little later on, okay?
Thanks very much, Lee.
All right. Hoofprints and Heartstrings, if you're joining us, a boy's memories of maritime harness racing in the 1970s. And I'm going to introduce Wally Hennessy. And, of course, doesn't need a big introduction from all of us in this room or joining us here tonight, but he's a double Hall of Famer, of course, and Charlottetown native. He's driven over 11,000 winners in a long career, still going strong after 6 decades. Leading driver in the Maritimes before moving his stable stateside in 1986, where he became the leading driver at Pompano Park in the winter months while earning the nickname King of the New York Sire Stakes in the summer months. And Wally, of course, forever linked to the two-time Horse of the Year moneymaker and is an important ambassador of maritime harness racing. And when you think of Exhibition Park Raceway in St. John, Inga Palmer used to call in the radio station back in the day when I was with the broadcast industry at that time, and you hear the results. That's one name that you heard of quite a bit as well. And we have a message from Wally Hennessy, and we'll bring it for you here, all part of the book launch.
Okay, here we are. I've joined in with Nicole McPherson here to talk about the new book that just is being released here today at the track. Hoofprints and Heartstrings. And Russell Henderson, who's a St. John native, gives his he actually wrote the book, I guess, and gives all his views of the racing game, not only at Exhibition Park Raceway in St. John, but throughout the Maritimes. And he touches on so many great things. You know, he touches on all the great horses during that era, the drivers and the owners, the trainers. Really, I mean, it's an excellent book, excellent read. I found it really interesting because I was kind of there halfway through the 70s. I went there with the mid-70s, and all the guys that he writes about, and the great horses and the great horsemen and owners, he touches on it, from the blacksmiths, everybody actually. My father-in-law, Doug Caldwell, was mentioned numerous times in the book. And, I just found it very interesting, and I hope that at the launch there today that everybody will understand all the amount of work that the team put in to put this book together. Russell, I guess, had to do tons of research. I know that if his parents were alive right now, they'd be some proud with the job that he done, because it really is. It's an excellent job, and he got good sponsorships there through Meridian Farms, and he had the team there with Nicole. Nicole's doing this part of it, and then they had Larry and Jerry and Aurelie, and then there was who was the other one? Amber Nicholson, right? Yeah, she was a new editor or whatever. She did a tremendous job. So I just want to wish everybody a good time there today, and if you can, support Russell on this project here that he put together, because it really is an excellent read, and you'll really enjoy that. That was back in the 70s was we were booming in the harness industry. So I just want to thank Nicole for having me on here to give Russell a shout out and the team a shout out. All the best.
All right, so there's Wally Hennessy, and you had an opportunity to talk to Wally, of course, not only this, but he had a book out too, and
Yes,
that was
yeah.
quite exciting. But yeah, nice to hear from Wally today.
It is, for sure. He's still so busy and racing away. So he's a great driver, and yeah, it's been a great opportunity for me to work with Wally and also to get to know Marcel. I had grandeur with him the last couple of years, and that was a fantastic trainer and a great opportunity. But harness racing is incredible. You end up meeting some of the biggest stars in harness racing, and they become your best friends, and it happens quickly. And it's I've never found that there's any barriers in this industry. Everybody's very welcoming. So,
You know, one thing that for this book, and we are just being told now that we cannot connect with Billy O'Donnell today, which is a shame. But Billy, of course, from Spring Hill, Nova Scotia, and one of course all-time greats in harness racing, with over 5,700 driving wins and nearly 100 million in earnings. But
I'm still here.
Oh, Billy's here. Excellent. All right. You can hear us, Billy? He's starting the car up. So, Bill, you're live right now on the book launch. Can you hear us okay?
BR
31379. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we have Bill there. Phil, you may want to pull that audio down there. And yeah, so the control room has been trying to get through and weren't able to connect there. So we apologize about that. But anyway, what I was saying about the book a little earlier was if you get a chance to add this book to your collection, which you should do, this will give you an opportunity to find out some of the heyday and the names of the horses. And one of the things that we talked about earlier, Nicole, and I see Melissa here today, Melissa Keith, who was talking to Russell a little earlier about just how he did such a great job of naming all these great horses over the years that you remember as a fan, and all the people that participated in the 70s at Exhibition Park Raceway in St. John.
Incredible book, and everything. I just find the stories are just, it's just such a, there's so much in there that people need to read. Like, there's so much humor in regards to all the different things that Russell has experienced in his life, from being a star hockey player and it touches on so many things, and yeah, it's a terrific book.
So Larry mentioned a little earlier the title sponsor, Meridian Farms, and some of the great folks that worked on the team there, so we really appreciate that. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get our next guest here, but the guests that are tuned in and the ones that were doing the draw a little earlier, the early bird special, had a chance to win the 2024 Gold Cup and Saucer table. You got Bill back? Okay. Billy, it's Lee Drake and Nicole McPherson. Can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Sorry about that. We were just crossing the border. Luckily, they let us back into Canada. We just came back from Iowa. We're at the border. The border guard was kind of looking at us there, I think. But anyway.
Okay, well.
We're clear. We're free and clear.
You're free
Welcome
and clear.
home.
Yeah, welcome back to Canada. Listen,
Thank you.
So we are tuned in tonight, and with the book launch with Russell Henderson's book, Hoofprints and Heartstrings, Boys' Memories of Maritime Harness Racing in the 1970s. Now, I know you've done a lot of traveling over the years, but a lot of great memories, of course, in New Brunswick over the years, and a lot of great competitors and horses that you'll find in this book. But can you share with us some of the great stories that you remember? Well, they did let him back into Canada. That's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. So I think we are breaking up on that. So, Billy, listen, we're going to let you go. We do appreciate Russell and his team here. Appreciate you coming in tonight, and briefly anyway, and an opportunity to support the book. And we talked about this before. Standardbird Canada director as well. I had the pleasure of working with Bill O'Donnell and with Standardbird Canada. He's always big to support other projects across the country, and great to support Russell's book as well. So we have the draw coming up.
Yes, exciting.
And so, as I was saying a little earlier, 2024 Gold Cup and Saucer. There was an early bird special that went up until October the 15th. So the folks that did buy the book had an opportunity to get in on that draw. So we have several names in there, which tells you, Russell, just how many people actually purchased the book on the early bird. And we're going to make the draw here now. So I'll make the draw and see if you can read the name of who will win the table for the Gold Cup and Saucer in 2024.
So the winner is Joseph Aquino.
So Joseph is the winner. And are you going to contact, you guys will contact Joseph?
So Joseph will get in contact with you. We'll call you after the show, and we'll make arrangements to email you all the details you need to know for next year's Gold Cup and Saucer, which should be another great one.
All right, so here's the book. We have it right here, and you can get your very own copy. For those of you who are joining us here today in the 1888 Lounge, for those of you who are joining us online today, you can go to retromedia.ca to get a copy of your book as well. And it is something that you should be adding to your harness racing collection. It is a great one. Hoofprints and Heartstrings, A Boy's Memories of Maritime Harness Racing in the 1970s. Nicole, always a pleasure to co-host with you, and thanks for a great afternoon.
Thanks for everything, Lee, and it's been a pleasure being here, and thank you to everyone for being here.
All right. So thanks for joining us. We're wrapping up the book launch here today. Keep in mind that harness racing continues here tomorrow on Sunday. That's the 22nd. Post time is at 2 o'clock.